is to have discussion. The slide deck should not take us too long to sift through, but after this slide deck, we'll open up the floor for discussions. Given the sizable crowd, we will not take any time here to introduce each and every one of you at this stage, but hopefully when we get to the Q&A, we'll have decent time to let each of you to ask questions and introduce yourself. So I'll start by telling you a little bit about iGuide. I'm Xiaowen Wang. Perhaps most of you would know me at this point. I'm a professor of geography and geographic information science, computer science, and urban and regional planning at the University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign. And we have 6 focus areas, and we have the leaders of those areas will tell you more about these 6 key components of iGuide. And George Percival, I think a lot of you would know George, as was my colleague, Deanna Hans, are in charge of the partnership program as part of our iGuide in Denver. So they will facilitate our discussion toward the second half of this slide deck, and as well as the Q&A. Next slide. So iGuide stands for Institute for Geospatial Understanding through an Integrative Discovery Environment. Pretty cool acronym. We actually had a number of alternatives, but this one really got everyone's vote. Next slide. iGuide is funded as part of the NSF Harness the Data Revolution Initiative, or Big Idea. NSF has 10 such big ideas. HDR, Harness the Data Revolution, is one of the 10 big ideas. NSF this fall funded the first 5 HDR institutes with total funding of $75 million for the next 5 years. So we're one of the 5 new institutes received $15 million for 5 years work. Next slide. We have a website, including basic information about the teams and also partners, including your organizations. And this slide lists our collaborating institutions. These institutions directly receive funding from NSF, and University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign is the lead institution, and I'm serving as the principal investigator and director for iGuide. Next slide. Our mission is to transform geospatial data-intensive sciences through integration of AI and cyber GIS. Stands for Geographic Information Science and Systems based on advanced cyber infrastructure. Reproducible data-intensive analytics and modeling, fair data principles, and innovative education and workforce development programs. Our vision is to establish novel, integrative geospatial discovery environment for empowering diverse communities to produce data-intensive solutions for today's pressing resilience and sustainability challenges. So it's a pretty mouthful. Let's go to the next slide. We spent quite a bit of time to translate the mission and vision into a diagram like this one, representing the key components of the Institute, basically 6 of those, centered around geospatial data-intensive analysis, modeling, and observation, driven by sustainability and the resilience challenges. I'll give you a few examples in a few slides. But on the left, 3 key components: convergence science catalysts, geospatial AI and data science, and core cyber infrastructure capabilities and services. On the right side, education and workforce development, engagement and partnerships, and evaluation knowledge transfer. Like I mentioned earlier, each of these components will be corresponding to each of our 6 teams, and we have some of the team leaders here to tell you more about these key components. Next slide, please. These are the leaders of our institute. Basically, each of the 6 components corresponding to each of the 6 teams. Each team has 2 leaders, plus me, 13 folks here. And of course, you have some folks playing some dual roles, like Anand Padmanabhan, my colleague at UIUC, is also serving as managing director for the institute, and we also have several folks serving as co-PIs. I'm not going to take time to introduce each of these amazing folks, but some of them are here today. Will share their thoughts about the projects and also present some specifics about the teams they represent. George, please, next. Yeah, again, 6 teams, different, slightly differently look compared to the diagram I introduced earlier. Next slide. I don't think we have Jack Liu or Dave Tarbolton here. Jack Liu is an ecologist and Dave Tarbolton is a hydrologist. Jack's from Michigan State University and Dave's from Utah State University. We are co-leading this convergence science catalyst team. So I play as an avatar for Jack and Dave today, since both of them are not available for this time. Our objective for this team is to create the knowledge needed to solve complex problems of resilience and sustainability in a multi-scale and telecoupled context through geospatial data intensive and multi-type analysis and modeling. Multi-type includes AI theory-based and mechanistic approaches. Got a wonderful team here. In fact, each of the 6 teams you'll see, they're just amazing folks, represent diverse expertise. In this case, we have, as I mentioned, hydrologist, ecologist, economist, biologist, geographers, industrial engineer. So just a blend of wonderful interdisciplinary collaborations here. And with a particular focus, next slide, please, on resolving the complexity of interconnected socio-economic environmental systems. Like this diagram, I'll explain very quickly example. Let's say you have Midwest producing crops, as we know, and my backyard is cornfield rotating with the soybean as well. So a major disaster could be induced by climate change, like flood or drought, disrupt crop production in the Midwest. That could in turn change the dynamics of crop production, let's say in Brazil, or could be other parts of the world through global trade. That in turn could lead to change of land use as well as possibly biodiversity loss. So these are cascading changes happening across socio-economic environmental systems in a very interconnected fashion across a number of geospatial scales. And how do we quantify such changes? And how do we predict the interconnected cascading changes is a major focus of our convergence science catalyst team. Next slide, please. So these are specific tasks of our convergence science catalyst team. The areas of our scientific investigations involve 3 major types of sustainability resilience challenges. Water security, as you could tell from the first 2 tasks, understand cross-scale vulnerability to hydroclimate extremes, water extremes, in terms of possible disruptions and disasters such as floods and droughts, as I mentioned. The second task, assess sustainability of water management infrastructure such as aging dams. These are water security challenges. The next 2 tasks involve food and water insecurity, but also related to biodiversity loss. So understand impacts of global changes on land use and food security, and evaluate the telecoupling, meaning the interconnectedness across multiple scales within socio-economic environmental systems. So how this change is happening over time and over a long distance, and how we would be able to characterize such interconnected changes. So these are specific tasks pursued by our convergence science catalyst team. Of course, this is still at pretty abstract level. Next slide, please. So at this point, it would be my great pleasure to introduce to you one of our team leaders here for our geospatial AI and data science team, Professor Bo Li, my colleague at UIUC, to tell you a little bit about what this team does.
Okay, great. Thank you, Xiaowen. Hi, everyone. My name is Bo Li. I'm a professor in statistics at UIUC. I'm the co-lead of this team with Professor Jiawei Han, who is a professor in computer science, also at University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign. So our team is to, by the objectives already says very clearly. So our team is to advance the AI and data science for geospatial data. And we have several specific goals that I will show I think we will show in the next page. But overall, I think the biggest goal for us is to how to use AI and data science and statistical technology to integrate data from different scientific areas. And so we can give a comprehensive story, or we can do comprehensive research about particular question related to environment or related to climate change. I'm also going to introduce this revolutionary thoughts about revolutionary concept about the geospatial knowledge hypercube. Next page, please. Oh, so this is the knowledge hypercube. This part, I think Professor Jiawei Han is a real expert, but since he's not here, I will just try my best to speak for him. So this, I think, is a very new concept to how to integrate different models and data and map or location and literatures into one cube. So the hypercube can integrate unstructured data and structured data together. Unstructured data includes the map data, let's say, and also the data you collected from social media, from news coverage, and from literature, from research literatures. You combine all those unstructured data, and then develop some index, structured index data, and then combine with the structured data. For environmental and climate data, usually this is the spatial temporal data. So you combine the spatial temporal dependence structure in the data and also the time location, temporal location, and then combine all of them together to find a solution for some to answer some scientific question. So here for this figure, so I think it gives a few examples. Let's see, for the model data, we can have climate model and weather models. This has a lot of data sets from climate model output. And then we have water models, land use models, socioeconomic models. So for example, if we wanted to study the impact of climate change, the climate change affected different areas. Let's say the water security, food security, and of course, the economics would have been impacted a lot by the climate change. So this hypercube can integrate all those data with observed data, from the data domain, and then with the computation technology, and then we can gain knowledge by integrating everything together. So I hope that I can represent Professor Han's idea to some degree. In the next page, please. So we have 3 tasks for this one. First is advanced geospatial AI and data science foundations. So for this part is mainly to develop cutting-edge AI technology and also data science methods. Data science method can be machine learning, deep learning, or statistical methods. So for the geospatial data, we know that it does have the structure, the spatial time. Usually it's a spatial temporal data, and then the dependence how to model or how to understand the structure in this data is usually the key component to analyze, to understand such data. So we will try to develop a new algorithm and a new methods particularly for the geospatial data. And then one focus that we particularly wanted to address is the extreme values, because now the extreme values is highly related to the catastrophes. Let's say the flood, the drought, and the tornadoes that has affected several states. We just talked about it has been a disaster for several states, and hurricanes. All those are related to extremes. So how should we? And the extremes is usually very challenging to handle from both statistical methods point of view and also from like a theoretical justification. And so how can we develop some maybe deep learning or machine learning methods to handle the spatial extremes? So we can forecast, we can understand how the extremes happen and forecast extremes in the future. The second one is innovative geospatial knowledge hypercube. As I mentioned, this is a revolutionary concept. It's very beyond the traditional methods how to deal with geospatial data. So I explained a little bit more details in the previous slides. Not sure if I do a very good job to speak for Jiawei. I just tried my best. So I think I will move to the third one. Develop structural guidance for computational reproducibility and the data ethics. So for scientific fields, computation, not just computational, actually the reproducibility for a scientific experiment and also for computational reproducibility have been a pressing issue. So for here, since we're mainly dealing with AI and data science, so the computational reproducibility will be our focus, and also how to practice data ethics in the whole algorithm development, and also how to interpret our result and how to use our result. So we will promote computational reproducibility through our through the work in this whole iGuide. We will share data and share codes online to public, and we will try to encourage people to assess the reproducibility of our result. And we also will practice data ethics. We will also practice ethics when we collect data and when we share the data, and also how to use the data. So so for this part, I think for the whole process, from data collection to data analysis to interpretation of the result, and also how to transform our result to policymakers. So for the whole process of this, we will try to ensure that reproducibility and the data ethics are guaranteed. And also we hope that we can make a good model for reproducibility and ethics for the future data science. Okay, next page probably. Okay, good. Thank you.
Thanks much, Paul. That was a very nice short tour for our AI and data science team. So next we have our core cyber infrastructure capabilities and services team. I think one of the leaders of the team, Carol Song from Purdue University, is here. Carol.
Thank you, Xiaowen. I'm Carol Song. I know some of the names here. So I'm co-leading the core cyber infrastructure capabilities and services team. As Xiaowen showed earlier, the vision and mission of this project the CI team will play a key role in making that a reality. So the central focus of this focus area is to create an integrated discovery environment by integrating both the existing and new capabilities that are distributed and scattered around among the partners and elsewhere in the national cyber infrastructure. We intend to create better interfaces and work both from the human angle and also technology angle to make that a more seamless environment to help transform the way we're using these complex geospatial data sets to get to the research outcome that we designed. Next slide, please. So this picture kind of represents our vision for the cyber infrastructure in this project. We call it the iGuide platform, which really is aimed at filling the what we call missing middle. So from a lot of the data sets and perhaps the hardware resources, the most advanced cyber infrastructure resources, to the actual conduct of convergence science, there's a lot of, you would say, barriers and also time spent on wrangling data, getting the data to be appropriate for the computational models, for example, for training the machine learning models, as Bo alluded to earlier. So this, the bridging part, if you look at the inside each of the smaller boxes, those are areas representing the direction of work that we're gonna conduct in this cyber infrastructure team. Next slide, please. So this is a little bit more specifics on what this platform would look like. Now we're just starting with a project, and we know there are existing capabilities that the research team can already leverage. We're going to make that process a lot easier to perhaps bring the expertise from the CI team to really support the research collaborations. So as Xiaowen pointed out earlier, the science agenda in this project, a lot of it would involve cross-linking models and other methods from different domains. So very often we all know that it's a pretty difficult process to get two models from totally different domains, for example, hydrology and economics. And they just work in different scales, and data formats obviously are different. So we're gonna make that process a lot easier with the goal of accelerating the integration of these models. So in these in this figure, you can see under the core capabilities, we are talking about creating modular and reusable software pieces that can connect people to data sets and get the data sets to be processed and transformed into something they can use directly, and also to allow them to capture their workflows in a more reusable way and easier to share with rest of the community. And also the cyber team will play this role of integrating new and innovations, for example, from the AI and data science team, as they come up with this exciting, new concept of knowledge cube. We realized that would come from this joint work with computer science and perhaps statistics and other information science from those areas. And we're gonna transform from research to something more production quality kind, sort of operationalize these computer science research into something that can be used directly by the domain scientists. And also the plan is we're going to have hosted services, whether they're all going to be in one big platform or a set of distributed services with well-defined interfaces. We're going through the design process right now to eventually present an integrated environment for our research team. Next slide. So this is kind of dividing our tasks into 5 categories. The data on demand really focuses on getting data access and processing data to meet the needs of the research team. And we take it very seriously on advancing the interface between models and data. So to create better interoperability between models and data. And the third area, which is very important to facilitate and support the education and workforce development by providing platforms, tools, and expertise support to the needs of our workforce development team. And with the partners represented in the CI team, we have well-established existing services, and we're going to focus also on how to integrate those cyber infrastructures and services and make them work with each other, having good interfaces. And the key thing is, in the end, is to make it more seamless for the end users, for our researchers. And we're also going to work with the partnerships and engagement team to support the virtual consulting services. Is that my last slide? Yeah.
Thanks very much, Carol.
That's it.
Yeah, very nice. So next, let's get to our education and workforce development team. I understand Eric's here from University of Minnesota, is co-leader of this team.
Yeah, thank you, Shawan. So I'm co-lead of the education and workforce development, along with Mohan, who is my partner in crime for this team. Overall, as you can see on the slide, our objective is to create convergent learning resources and programs to promote knowledge and skill acquisition and build geospatial data science competencies for diverse learners. So our team's really responsible in helping address one of iGuide's key goals involved in enhancing these sorts of data, computational, cyber, geospatial literacy among all of our learners, both inside the Institute as well as the diverse array of learners, as well as that includes students, professionals, scientists, postdocs, a diverse array of people in order to kind of build these sorts of literacies. So we're collectively trying to coordinate and promote data-centric learning by developing the educational resources as well as carrying out activities that help build the knowledge, skills, and competencies around geospatial data science. So we're targeting a pretty broad and diverse group of audiences. So we're really eager to reach out and meet with different organizations and institutions in order to build up a community of practice where we not only kind of ship things out in terms of educational resources, but also understand what already exists, what are the needs for both education and workforce development. Longer term, what we're hoping to do is to really kind of build convergent science, educational workforce development, and kind of reach goals that will instill a cross-disciplinary mindset in an integrated system perspective in learners, educators, researchers, and practitioners across the Institute in all of these communities of practice that I was talking about. To that end, we have an absolutely amazing team that you can see down on the bottom slide, who are really focused on 3 goals. If we go to the next slide, please. The EWD team has kind of these three goals. The first is to understand, learn from, and forge connections with communities of practice. So we firmly believe that we're not going to have all of the answers and that there's a lot of great work out there. So really what we're trying to do here is to actually intentionally listen to everybody out there and understand what are the really missing components. So can we fill in some gaps in terms of learning pathways for our communities of practice? Because we all know sometimes, steps 1, 2, and 3 are pretty clear, but maybe 4, 5, and 6 a little less so, but we all have this kind of end target. So what we're hoping to do is to kind of build out these learner pathways and fill in any sort of gaps in the way of developing new educational resources and build on what's already there. Education task 2 or goal 2 is to design connections to the iGuide platform. So everything that Carol was talking about, we have a wonderful group as well as a set of resources that will enable us to build this kind of data-centric learning and will help us support what we call research-linked learning pathways. So everybody's going to come from a slightly different background and have a slightly different kind of direction or kind of career target. So what we want to do is build up these pathways so that it's kind of clearer for learners, both students as well as professionals, in order to kind of follow their own kind of educational and workforce development pathway. And in order to do that, we need to develop innovative instructional and training activities for convergent science education. There's a lot of activities built in the silos of our disciplines, and what we're really hoping to do is to help kind of converge and build that kind of convergent mindset and that cross-disciplinary mindset. So in order to do that, we believe we're going to have to create some innovative kind of instructional materials as well as activities. They'll hopefully kind of lead the way and work with our communities of practice in order to get this out. So those are kind of our 3 overall tasks. I'm pretty optimistic that we're going to be able to hit all of these and really start to hopefully shape the way that people really think about these sorts of things. And that's it from education and workforce development.
Thanks a lot, Eric. Next, let's talk a little bit about evaluation and knowledge transfer. This is our wonderful team focused on that. We have Charlie Catlett from the University of Illinois System Discover Partner Institute. Charlie, are you there?
I'm here.
Thank you.
Thanks. So let me kind of walk through our team here. So I'm Charlie Catlett. As Shawan said, I'm from the Discovery Partners Institute, which is a new institute of the University of Illinois System. I'm also a senior computer scientist at Argonne National Laboratory. My research background is high performance computing and networking, distributed systems, and new kinds of systems for measuring strategies and systems for measuring cities. I co-lead this team in partnership with Diana Stinton, who couldn't be here today. She's an adjunct professor at Cornell University and the executive director of the University Consortium for Geographic Information Science. So if you go to the next slide, you can see 3 kind of big ticket items that we are focused on in this team. Let me just talk about separately evaluation and knowledge transfer. On the evaluation strategies, our focus here is really on actual outcomes for people and organizations, as opposed to the more typical metrics such as headcount of attendees at the number of events, et cetera. For example, if you look at the first item on this slide, we're really thinking of education and training participants as having one outcome, which is not just absorbing knowledge from us, but as bi-directional knowledge transfer agents, which simply put means that they bring insights to the table as well in terms of our understanding as an iGuide team of what are the needs of the workforce in terms of its development, or in students in terms of their education. So this evaluation, as you heard from my own background, the word evaluation didn't show up. So this evaluation will require some expertise both within our team, We have Rodney Hobson, who is a leader at the UIUC Center for Culturally Relevant Evaluation and Assessment, as well as another partner at the University of Chicago called Outlier, which is an evaluation center there. And so there, we will be pulling in their expertise. And even also within our team, Courtney Flint from Utah State University has already drafted an internal self-assessment survey so that across the iGuide program, our teams can start thinking about what are these metrics for evaluation early on so that we know what data we need to be collecting and in order to do a retrospective assessment or evaluation. So that's one facet of this team. The other, knowledge transfer. Our focus here is also less about the mechanisms and more about the strategies for this bidirectional knowledge transfer. We're interested in both transfer internally to outside and outside to inside of iGuide, but also transfer of knowledge among this diverse set of iGuide teams. So you can see in bullet number 2 here, we're forming a council of geospatial leaders. And by this, we're looking at experts from industry, from government, nonprofits, and academia. And what we envision for this council is that they will be able to help iGuide writ large identify gaps in the technologies and the methods that they need to be using in their organizations, but as importantly, the skills gaps that they see in the workforce that we're training with our education and training and workforce development team. So there are lots of mechanisms for knowledge transfer within the project, including and across the project, including traditional research publication and presentation, as well as the education workforce training that you just heard from. And now we're going to turn over and you'll hear from our engagement and partnerships team. Thanks.
Wow. Many thanks, Charlie. That was a nice segue there. So for our engagement and partnerships team, this essentially is the focus of today, is talking with all of you, facilitated by our engagement and partnerships team, led by, as I mentioned earlier, Deanna Hans, my colleague at UIUC, and George Percival, who's running the slide deck here. Deanna, are you ready to give an introduction, or George?
I'll do this part and then we'll segue into discussion and George will help us with that part. So hi, everyone. I'm Deanna Hintz. I am a professor of atmospheric science here at UIUC. I study a lot of extreme and high impact weather. So you can imagine it's been a bit busy for us here in the department these past several days. And my role is the co-lead for the engagement partnership team, as Shawan mentioned, with George, my fearless partner in crime. So our role is, I think the name pretty much says it all, it's engagement. It's one of the key ways that the Institute will be interfacing with people that are outside of it. And so part of that will be the interactions that we're going to be helping to facilitate with you, our partners. And then part of that is going to be developing, engaging science communication to communicate what the Institute is doing to the broader public. And so for that purpose, we have an absolutely blockbuster team of folks, both who have a lot of experience in working in these multi-institutional and organizational types of collaborative groups. And then also people who are experts in science communication between data visualizers from the National Center for Supercomputing Applications, which is also here at UIUC, and then also science writing as well. And so we have a really fantastic team to be able to put these things together. Next slide, please, George. And so our goals essentially encompass 3 main tasks. So the first one I'll mention anyway, is that, as I mentioned, it's the interacting with you to develop these partnerships with iGuide and to figure out these multi-way exchanges and interactions that have come up and has been mentioned several times by the other teams. So that's something that we're going to be diving into here in a bit. Now, another part of this, and this is something that Carol brought up and other teams have as well, is that one of the main ways we're going to be interacting with partners and with folks that are interested in engaging with the science of the Institute is developing this virtual consulting office. And so this will essentially be a way to channel people to both the knowledge base that the Institute is going to be developing, and also figuring out ways of how we can come up with new and innovative problems and solutions and ways of working towards solving real world problems through the interactions with this office. And then finally, through this process, and this is important, and I think one of the most exciting things about this project is that because of this amazing team of science communicators that we have, as we're going through, working with y'all to exchange knowledge and ideas and resources, and as we are working on these real world problems, we have these amazing communicators to then craft these stunning data visualizations, to craft these really engaging science stories, so that then we can bring that work to broader audiences for both the interest and enjoyment of the general public. Next slide, please. And so that's exactly where y'all come in. This lists some of the initial partners that, as Xiaowen mentioned at the beginning, the ones that signed the letters of commitment during the proposal phase. And again, thank you for supporting us and engaging in our proposal development process. So we're, as you can see, our list of partners spans a wider range of different kinds of organizations and institutions and industry partners. And what we're really hoping as we develop how we're going to be working with each of you and working with you as part of different groups of folks that have, different objectives and different things in common, that we can really come up with some innovative ways to interact and exchange so that we can further the science all together. And so with that, I believe I'm done with my summary of our team's objectives, and I am going to stop the